Welcome to the Weather Farm, where we have the forecast for the United States that impacts the storm systems and weather patterns that you need to know as you begin to plan your week. We also break it down region by region so you can know exactly what's going to happen in your neighborhood over the next 48 hours. So let's dive right into our forecast. As we begin our Wednesday, we are watching an upper level low centered just to the south and east of Chicago. That is bringing unsettled weather from really all the way from Saskatchewan through the Dakotas and the upper Great Lakes over towards Pennsylvania and down along the East Coast. These storms that are along in Virginia to begin our Wednesday, they're what moved through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys on our Tuesday, brought isolated reports of severe weather, but generally they are non-severe as they move their way towards the East Coast, along the Gulf, across parts of Louisiana and southern Louisiana into Mississippi and the Panhandle. We're watching an area of disturbed weather as it continues to move off to the east, but out west we have high pressure dominating over the Pacific Northwest. There is a little bit of a trough that is trying to dig into the Pacific Northwest. That's going to help keep your temperatures a little cooler for your Wednesday. But let's put this map into motion throughout the day. And so as we see that low pressure continues to sit and spin over the upper Great Lakes, moving to near Cleveland, Ohio, by the time we get to our Wednesday afternoon, it's going to continue to bring light amounts of rainfall for the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. Out through Pennsylvania, New York, your rainfall will be increasing. Across Louisiana, we could see an isolated thunderstorm pop during the day on our Wednesday, but we're really not expecting severe weather for the most part, though we will watch parts of western Pennsylvania for some thunderstorms Wednesday afternoon due to the heating of the day. Primary threat here is going to be severe weather, strong winds, and hail. In fact, if we look at the Storm Prediction Center, they have issued a marginal risk of severe weather for eastern Ohio, Pennsylvania, into West Virginia. The greatest chance of severe weather that they believe for our Wednesday is across parts of southwestern Missouri into northern Arkansas. So we're going to watch this with the afternoon daytime heating. There's enough lift in the atmosphere and enough instability and marginal dew points that would support severe weather. So we're going to keep an eye on this area as well as across parts of far southern Texas. We have a piece of energy that is moving out of Mexico that will skirt the far southern tip of Texas on our Wednesday. So as we continue to go through the day, by the time we get to Wednesday evening, we're watching that area of low pressure continue to sit and spin over Lake Erie. And as we make our way to Thursday morning, it hasn't really moved much, but it continues to bring heavy amounts of rain to the northeast. The rain across the Dakotas and the upper Great Lakes, that's kind of died off by the time we get to our Thursday morning. In fact, if we look at our severe weather index for our Thursday, there is really not a significant chance of severe weather anywhere across the United States. A couple of areas are in that marginal category. We will watch, especially along this East Coast, to see if that gets upgraded over the next 24 hours. But right now, the severe weather threat looks to be calming down as we make our way to the Memorial Day weekend. In fact, as we go through the weekend, we are not really anticipating any severe weather threats across the United States for the next 7 days. Well, let's take a look at our jet stream. The jet stream is kind of zonal from the west coast through the east coast. There's a slight dip across the Ohio and Great Lakes. That is allowing northwest flow of air and cooler temperatures to encompass the northern plains, the Great Lakes, into the northeast, keeping temperatures about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than normal for this time of year. As we put our jet stream into motion, we see that zonal pattern really taking shape. A little more pronounced dip across the eastern half of the United States. That's going to signal that we're going to have that continued cooler than normal weather across the eastern half of the United States as we make our way into the holiday weekend. Out west, we're starting to see a little buckle to the north. A little ridge is developing. So out west, you're going to be warmer as we approach the holiday weekend. We do have a little upper level low here across parts of Ontario that we're going to watch. It's going to help reinforce those northwesterly winds across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley into the northeast. We start to see ridging building across the northern plains by the time we get to Friday morning. And that's going to continue. And as this warm front lifts off to the north and east, as we make our way to Friday into Saturday, we're going to see unsettled weather from the plains down through the Tennessee Valley. We're going to watch this because there's a big race in Indianapolis this coming Sunday. And we're going to watch to see if rainfall could impact that race as we make our way into Sunday morning. Taking a look at our radar for our Wednesday, as I mentioned, as we start our day today, we're seeing some scattered storms across far southern parishes of Louisiana. As we go through the day, those are really going to be impacted by the daytime heating. And by the time we get to the afternoon, we could see those showers becoming a little more numerous. Again, the far southern parishes of Louisiana is primarily where we're going to see the impact. But by the time we get to the evening, we're going to watch those storms possibly move over towards New Orleans. So your Wednesday evening plans, if you have baseball games, those might be impacted as well. As we go over through the night, those are going to die down. But here's that system that's going to move out of Mexico. We're going to watch it skirt across southern Texas as we begin our Thursday. And then there's a little piece of energy with that buckling, that ridge building across the plains. A little piece of energy is going to ride along that jet stream down through Missouri into Tennessee. That could fire a few storms overnight, Wednesday into Thursday, associated with a lower level jet. And so we're going to watch that complex of system make its way towards Nashville as we begin our Thursday morning. And by Thursday morning, that rain has moved through far southern Texas and is off into the Gulf. Across the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, again, we're going to have scattered showers with that low pressure system that is centered over northwestern Indiana as we begin our day Wednesday. We put our map into motion, and we're just going to see continued scattered showers out across Ohio where you have a little more lift, a little more instability. You could see a few of those storms with a rumble of thunder and some lightning as we go into Wednesday afternoon, but generally it's light rain that we're seeing from most of these areas, and you can really see that spin. And here comes that piece of energy diving out of the central plains into Missouri as we begin our Thursday. But by Thursday, most of the precipitation is winding down across the Ohio Valley. Again, due to the sun-angled, the northwesterly winds, the cloud cover, the sun is very strong this time of the year, so it could create enough instability, even with the sun not being out, that we could still pop a few random storms on the day Thursday. We're going to watch that, especially across parts of Illinois and into western Indiana. As we look across the Northeast, we're watching that rain heavy through Pennsylvania, down through Virginia, towards our nation's capital. And we'll put our map into motion, and you can really see that that's going to continue for most of the day on Wednesday. And as that system moves out of Ohio, and the low pressure system starts to move towards the east over towards Lake Erie, we're going to continue to get that lift out ahead of it associated with that warm front, and that's going to fire some storms as we go into Wednesday night for areas like Pittsburgh down to Morgantown, West Virginia. And as we go through the day on our Thursday, heavy rain is going to be possible across the far northeast. We get into the daytime heating on Thursday, and we're going to watch an area of heavy rain make its way up from Long Island through Connecticut and Rhode Island, and eventually out along the Cape and into the Boston area with heavy amounts of rain by the time we get to Thursday night. In terms of our temperatures for our Wednesday, again, we're going to watch temperatures across the eastern half of the United States about 10 to 15 degrees below normal with those northwesterly winds associated with that upper level low. Across parts of Texas, you're in the 80s and 90s, not as warm as you have been. That warmth has been shifted a little bit west across the deserts of Arizona and California, where temperatures will easily hit 100. Across parts of Florida and southern Georgia, you're in the 90s for your Wednesday. And as we go into our Thursday, it's almost a carbon copy of our Wednesday temperatures. Cool in the eastern half, warm in the desert. Texas, you are starting to warm up, especially across parts of West Texas, where we could see temperatures approaching 100 degrees for places like Lubbock. As we make our way into New Mexico, we're seeing, again, temperatures generally in the 80s and 90s. Across the Pacific Northwest, we're in the 50s and 60s for our afternoon highs. Taking a look region by region over the next 48 hours, it's cool 40s and 50s from Maine through New York down through Pennsylvania, really due to that cloud cover and those northwesterly winds out ahead of it. And this is why we get some of those storms firing Wednesday afternoon into Wednesday night, is we're going to have a little nose of warm air where temperatures are going to be in the 60s and 70s across parts of eastern Ohio. As we make our way to our Thursday, all of this area cools down as that low continues to move off to the east and funnel in those northwesterly winds. Temperatures widespread 40s and 50s. In terms of our precipitation over the next 48 hours, areas of Pennsylvania, New York City, Connecticut, up toward the Boston area, you could see 1 to 2, possibly 3 inches across parts of eastern, southwestern Connecticut onto Long Island. We're going to watch the potential for flooding across this area. Elsewhere, rainfall amounts will generally be less than half of an inch. As we make our way to the southeast for our Wednesday, it's 80s and 90s through the Carolinas into southern Georgia, down through Florida. Where you have that rain across far southern Louisiana, temperatures are going to be held down into the lower 80s for your Wednesday. Across Tennessee, we're seeing temperatures generally in the 70s and 80s. And as we make our way to our Thursday, it is pretty much the same thing. We're going to see, again, 80s and 90s through the Carolinas, cooler in the mountainous areas, highs in the 60s and 70s. And we're going to see some afternoon showers across parts of central Florida that could keep some temperatures down in the upper 80s. As we look at our total precipitation over the next 48 hours, again, those storms across the southern parishes of Louisiana, they could dump a 1 to 2 inch rainfall amount as those storms are just sitting, continuing to rain over the same area. Elsewhere, it's generally less than 1/4 of an inch for most areas. As we make our way towards the south central plains, Texas, you're warm in the 90s. Arkansas, you're in the 80s, 70s to your north, 70s across Kansas and Missouri for your Wednesday. As we make our way to our Thursday, pretty much a carbon copy of the same thing. A little bit warmer here across West Texas, temperatures approaching the low 100s. But where you have that rain across far southern Texas to begin your day Thursday, temperatures are going to be held down there in the upper 80s to near 90 degrees. And it is going to be 90s and 80s across Mississippi and Louisiana and southern Arkansas for your Thursday. In terms of precipitation, where you see that system diving out of the Central Plains Wednesday night into Thursday afternoon, we could see up to 1/2 of an inch in isolated areas. But again, the main thing is going to be, do we get thunderstorms popping across parts of Texas due to that daytime heating? If so, we could see isolated 1/2 inch to 1 inch rainfall amounts by the time we get to Friday morning. Across the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes, it is generally temperatures 40s and 50s across the northern tier, 50s and 60s through the Ohio Valley. About 10 to 15 degrees below your seasonal norms for this time of the year on your Wednesday. And with that northwesterly flow still in place and that area of low pressure centered over Lake Erie, we're going to see this general area remain in the 50s and 60s for your afternoon highs on Thursday. We start to see some warming over across the northern plains, the Dakotas into Minnesota. You could approach the 60-degree mark, but the real warmth is pushed way down to the south across parts of Kentucky, Missouri, and into Kansas. In terms of precipitation, the heaviest amounts are going to be across eastern Ohio, but generally light amounts, less than 1/4 of an inch for most areas as that system continues to spin. Looking at the northern plains, it's a cool day on our Wednesday with that northwesterly flow, temperatures in the 40s and 50s. As we make our way to our Thursday, temperatures are warming, especially across parts of Wyoming and Montana. We're seeing mid-60s as well as into Nebraska and Colorado. In terms of our precipitation, again, with that northwesterly flow, less than 1/4 of an inch, but we could see some rain coming across the Rockies into western parts of the Dakotas and northern Nebraska that could also put down 1/4 of an inch. Across the desert southwest for our Wednesday, temperatures are warm, 105 plus for the deserts. As we make our way to LA County, it's low 90s for most areas. And on our Thursday, temperatures are pretty much a repeat of the same, maybe a few degrees warmer across the deserts, but a few degrees cooler across parts of Oregon, where temperatures are going to be in the 60s and 70s, and not much is expected in the way of precipitation. In terms of the Pacific Northwest, it's cool with that trough trying to dig in. Temperatures held down in the 50s and 60s for your Wednesday. And on our Thursday, it is warming slightly across parts of eastern Washington and eastern Oregon into the 60s. Southern Idaho, you're approaching the low 70s for your highs. But as we make our way into the Canadian provinces, it's 50s across British Columbia and for Alberta. In terms of precipitation, light amounts are generally expected over the next 48 hours. Most areas seeing under 1/4 of an inch of rain. Well, we thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm. We hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. Check back with us on Friday for your weekend forecast. We hope you have a wonderful day. Let us know about the weather that's going on in your area. Are you having to put on an extra layer because the weather is a little bit cooler in your neck of the woods? Leave us a comment and have a great day.